Hello and welcome back to Down to the Tyre. Today we're joined by another British GT driver because our past few episodes have also been with British GT drivers, and we're very excited to talk to Charles Clark today. How are you doing?
Yeah, really good. Thank you. Thanks for having me on. I've watched a couple of your episodes in the past, so it's nice to be actually on here and talk to you guys about everything motorsport.
Oh, that's great to hear. And yeah, we were saying before we started recording, we have decided to do this on pretty much the warmest day that we've had in this mini heat wave we're experiencing. So yeah, very warm, but very happy to be here. So the first kind of question that we had, and this is kind of how we start a lot of our episodes, which you'll know if you've listened to a few, are we like to kind of find out how someone first got into motorsport in the first place, and kind of what your earliest memories are of driving.
Yeah, so from my side, I didn't really do karting at all. Didn't really have the opportunity to, apart from having a little buggy at home and going around the garden and causing havoc. But it first started when I sort of left school and I was looking for a job. And it actually came up. There was a job at Into Racing who ran at the time Porsche Carrera Cup team and Porsche Sprint Challenge. And it was basically just to get involved, to basically get a job and get involved in motorsport. So I was a mechanic. I basically did everything. There was a very small team of us. And then I was there for about a year, and then we had an opportunity to rent out or hire a Porsche Boxster in the Porsche Club Championship from someone who actually gave us the car for free for the year just to maintain and actually make it better than what he gave it us at the start and then hand it back at the end. So we went with that, and then from there it sort of carried on for the next sort of 6 years now, which sounds quite a long time thinking about it, but a bit of a different route to many, that's for sure.
So looking back today from your time in the Boxsters, how important do you feel that was almost as a push start for your career? And how do you feel that that first season of racing went for you?
Yes, it's very interesting because I've been on the mechanical side compared to the driving side before I got into driving myself. So understanding how a car actually works really, I think, helped me in the future, especially in the last couple of years with developing setups and new cars that I've driven and stuff. But yeah, it's the first year was interesting. It was just my dad running and doing the spanners, so we had a bit of a laugh and I had a few mistakes, a few loose bolts and stuff, but it was all good fun. And we sort of came second in the championship, against someone who'd actually done it for a long period of time. So we were quite happy with that. And I got a win at Alton in the wet, which was quite nice.
Obviously, you're still associated with the championship as well with your own team, Bradley Performance. So, what opportunities does your team provide? And then, what are the challenges associated with being on that side running a team?
Yeah, I can see why team managers are so stressed and team owners. I can really see why they hate some drivers and mechanics. Um, but yeah, it's we absolutely love doing it in the Porsche Club Championship because it's basically where I started and where we wanted to go back to. And we've got only started last year, but we've got 5 or 6 cars out this year, so it's full on but exciting. And I like sort of going back to where it started.
I guess in a way, having a team in the championship you began your motorsport journey in is kind of a testament to the championship itself. How important do you feel club motorsport is in the UK and also ensuring people get opportunities like you had?
Yeah, it's very rare to get opportunities like I had, and I feel quite sorry for people that don't have the opportunity but definitely have the skill. I think getting into sort of rental karting and it's quite difficult to even prove yourself considering how expensive karting is now. But I think genuinely sim racing has really helped quite a few people in that aspect because you can sort of buy, yeah, a sim is sort of 2 grand to 5 grand. But if you get involved in a team and you get into these competitions, there's big prize money and opportunities. If you look at the guy in Porsche Sprint Challenge now, who's I think second in the championship who came. It's his first year of racing this year, but that was through sim racing, really.
And you mentioned your previous experience off track in motorsport. Have you felt that that's helped you almost understand the cars better and enable you to get the most out of the cars when competing?
I think it's very interesting because some drivers get in and just drive and they're naturally quick, but don't maybe not have an idea of how to make the car faster. But from my side, I think especially when I drove the McLaren Artura in the first year of GT4, um, it was really important that me and Jack learn how to develop the car and gave good feedback on what the car was doing. And I think it really gave us a head start in that championship against other people with the same car. So I guess it is a positive, but then you do start overthinking it when you're driving a car, when sometimes it's best just not think about it.
In Porsches in 2021 as well for the sprint challenge in the Cayman. How different was that to drive compared to the Boxster?
I don't think you could even class it as the same category. It's a car from the Boxster was a 2002 car, manual, very different to drive, and the Cayman was brand new in sort of 20. I think they came out in 2020 with a PDK. So a lot different and a lot more pressure, and everything happens a lot quicker. But it's also stuff you don't see, like the being on the touring car package on the BTCC. There's a lot of spectators. And just when you're in the assembly area, everything just feels a lot more heightened. So yeah, a lot different, but it's the best way to learn, I think, is jumping in something that is completely different.
For sure. And you built on that 2021 season the following year, because I know you had wins at both Silverstone and Alton Park with Team Parker Racing. How did you feel at the time, and then also reflecting on it now, that season was overall for you?
So 2021 was a really interesting year because it was my first year doing it, but it was also to make it happen. I part ownership with the team owner at the team I worked for, so I was actually prepping the car in 2021 myself in the workshop, and then Nick and the team would take it to the track. So that was very different. But in 2021, when we went to Team Parker, it was sort of I was more of a racing driver and arrived and focused on driving, which was a very different way of going about a race weekend. As I turned up and I wasn't absolutely shattered from prepping the car the whole week. But 2022 season was good. It started really well, but unfortunately just went downhill towards the end. A few minor issues we had, but it's a great team to be with. Team Parker, they run an outstanding team, and they always have and still are. But yeah, the 2022 season was a difficult because we were leading the championship, and then sort of the last two or three rounds it sort of went downhill. So
Were there kind of, did you have to adapt to the different driving style in the Cayman compared to the Boxster? Was it more or less difficult to drive, would you say?
um, the Cayman, as many people will know, is actually a really quite tricky car to drive. You can't overdrive it. You have to sort of drive within yourself, whereas the Boxster, I think you could push it and you can have it moving around a lot more. So very, very different. But I'd probably prefer the Cayman to drive.
And was there almost like a different sense in the paddock when you moved from the Boxsters to the Sprint Challenge, in the sense of going from more club racing to a bit more of a, well, a bit more competitive sort of full-on experience, I suppose?
Yes, exactly. And that's what I was saying about the Toka package, how there's at a club race, you hardly have anyone there to see you or hardly anyone watching, whereas you go to the touring car races and there's people absolutely everywhere. And even if they're not watching you, it feels like they are. And that just brings added pressure to yourself, to be honest.
So you then moved into GT4 with Optimum, and you won the Silver Championship that year with three overall GT4 victories. How did you find the step into GT4 racing in relation to aspects such as the longer races? So you might have like 2 or 3 hour races, and also the pit stops and also sharing driver duties.
Yeah, the first time sharing driver duties was interesting because it's not just your car, it's someone else's you've got to think about, and they're the one going to get in after you've maybe you made a setup change or change the brake bias or change the traction control or change the ABS. You've got to take their thoughts and their style into consideration. So it's a lot different. But for me, I love endurance racing. I love the whole team aspect, and I love um, everything that comes with it, like the driver changes and stuff like that. So yeah, it was a lot. It was very different, but definitely for the better for me.
And obviously, Optimum are a well-established team in GT racing. How important were the team in aiding your success that season, and how different was the McLaren to drive compared to the Porsches previously?
Yeah, Optimum, as they've only getting bigger and bigger and bigger, as you've seen. And they did such a good job with the team. It's such a big team there, and Ian Smith, and Pete, who sort of run the behind the scenes of the team. And then we had Adam, who was our engineer, who was absolutely outstanding. And we basically got on top of the car straight away. So to have those people around you in the first year of a new GT4 car is really important. But to dry differences, the McLaren compared to the Sprint Challenge car was it sort of felt like a slightly different era. It sort of felt like the McLaren was a lot more modern, if that makes sense. A lot more thought out than the Porsche. But I assume it's 4 or 5 years difference, so that does make complete sense. But a McLaren's always great to drive.
And I guess how important was your teammate Jack Brown in sort of getting you up to speed at the start of the season? Were you both almost coming into it in the same level of experience, or did he have some good advice to give to you to help you?
We just had an absolute blast. We just couldn't stop laughing and taking the mick out of each other, to be honest. So it wasn't very serious. It took, I think, one test day for us to gauge each other, and then from there it was just some of the best weekends I've had racing, just having a good laugh. But Jack had done 2 3 years of GT4 and British GT, so definitely brought some really good knowledge. But again, we're both sort of new to it, if that makes sense, because it was a completely new car, new team for us, which makes a big difference when moving from team to team. So everything changes a little bit. But Jack was great to have as a teammate. And it's funny, now I'm racing against him.
Need from a teammate, isn't it? Like someone like on your side you can have a laugh with, and yeah, that sounds great. And it must be funny now, yeah, as you said, like kind of flipping it to him being a competitor.
Yeah, we do. It's funny because I haven't seen him for a couple of years because he'd been doing British GT and I've been doing World Challenge. So it was nice to basically see him every weekend and catch up. But it is weird racing against him. It's sort of brought a bit of rivalry out, which we didn't have in the team, which is quite funny. We laugh about it and we send each other Instagram memes and stuff like that. So it's all good.
Of that. And during that season as well, obviously the championship has its annual away race abroad. What was that like? So I imagine that was your first race weekend abroad. And what was the experience compared to a race weekend in the UK?
Yeah, so we actually did a test. This was at Portimao in 2023, which was uncomfortably hot. But everyone likes going outside the country to race. It's a pretty cool thing to do. I'm lucky enough to have done it. And yeah, it's very different. European tracks are a lot wider than you think compared to the UK tracks, which actually bring more challenges than you think, because there's obviously more road to use. But yeah, I loved going abroad, that's for sure.
I don't want to focus too much on anything negative from that season, but how frustrating was it to miss out on the overall championship in the last rounds at such a late stage in the season?
It's hard to even describe it, but I came close many times in my short career. So that really felt like we were on the top of the car and on top of everything, and then everything sort of fell away. But it felt like it came back in Donington, and we were going to win the championship. And then I was sat in the car, and my pit stop was, I think, 30 minutes to go or an hour to go. I think we were third, which was fine to win the championship. And then the car was completely dead, no battery. And that minute when we was waiting for the car to be restarted was probably when we realised it had slipped. But it was our first year, and I think we took the positives out of being well, having won the Silverstone 500 and stuff like that. I think we were happy enough with what we got.
It's more or less difficult with it being obviously an issue with the car, as you said, rather than it, say, being a driver error. Like, how did the fact that it was an issue with the car make that feel, if that makes sense?
It makes you feel a lot better, because it makes you feel like it's not your fault. And if you go and crash the car, then it makes you feel a lot worse. But with it being a mechanical issue, it does help, definitely.
And on a more positive note as well, you were nominated as the BRDC Rising Star in 2024. So how did that feel, and what impact did that have on your career?
It's quite a few people get nominated for it, but there is a select few. And to be recognised at that early point in the career compared to other people, even on the Rising Stars who'd been around for quite a long time through karting and stuff, yeah, it does make a big difference. And it's also something you can push forward with sponsors, and stuff like that. So very lucky to have got that, and hopefully can get a membership in the future.
And at that 2024 season, how did the opportunity come about to move into the GT3 machinery? And what was the Aston like to drive in comparison to the previous cars that you'd driven?
So I don't really know how it came about, if I'm being honest. A, a good friend of the family, Matt Griffin, who races in ELMS, he looks after me, helped me with Optimum, and he was looking for opportunities in GT racing, in GT3, and something like that came about, and it wasn't 100% confirmed, but I decided to drive down to the prologue at Paul Ricard, even though we hadn't had any confirmed, and did the prologue with them, and then sort of managed to get everything confirmed after the prologue, which was, it didn't seem, it didn't, yeah, it felt very strange being last minute because everything I'd had before, I sort of knew what I was doing the next year, and going into something so big like GT World Challenge, it was, yeah, interesting. But you're involved in a team with people like Nicky Tim, Matteo Drudi, Sorensen, all basically driving the same car as you, which was pretty cool in that aspect. But how it compares to the other cars, it's just a completely different animal, in its own way. And yeah, I can't really remember the first drive because I was too busy, just focusing on the road, to be honest. But it's quite a cool feeling in the evening when you realise what you've driven.
And I know that the 24 hours of Spa as a race means a lot to you. What was it like to compete at both Spa and Monza that season?
Yeah, Spa is one of the best races. The 24 is one of the best races in the world. And there's obviously a few that come close. But to be even have an opportunity to race there and race at night is not many few, well, very few people say that they've done it, and I've done it, and I really want to go back, to be honest. So that's what I'm pushing for next year.
When it comes to preparing for, say, compare the 2 hour British GT race and then a 24-hour race, I imagine it's a very different process kind of leading up to it. But what are the main kind of differences in preparation for you?
Yeah, if it depends how you view the race, you can sort of break it down, and if you're doing it is sort of a 2 hour race at a time. So you do 2 hours, you do an hour in the car, box, and then another hour. And let's say there's four drivers, you're gonna have six hours in the car. So if you think about it like that, the difficulty is the long race week leading up to it and all the activities you have to do. Um, but it's all fun. You take it how it is, and you just got to enjoy the moment. To be honest,
2025 saw you once again competing in the GT World Challenge, this time in the BMW M4 GT3 Evo. How did it feel to win in the silver class in the first round of that season at Paul Ricard? And then looking at the whole season from start to finish, how do you kind of feel that went as a whole?
I think it went really well. I really enjoyed being with Paradigm, and I was very lucky for Darren to give me the opportunity to race for the team. It's such a good team, very professional. Got all the best people you can imagine in the team. And we got some great results. There's a few things like everyone would say didn't go our way, but overall we were always one of the fastest cars in our class in the silver class. And yeah, again, we were fighting to the championships, the last round again, which made it very difficult. But unfortunately, again, something didn't go our way in Barcelona. We just didn't really have the outright pace, and some damage on that one sort of put us out the race. But loved every minute of it. And the BMW was so different to drive than the Aston, even though the engine sort of in the same place and everything. So that was another challenge in itself.
Were there any tracks in particular that suited either the Aston or the BMW during your time in GT World Challenge?
I think they were very strong at the same sort of tracks. I think they were very strong in tracks with new surface, definitely, such as Paul Ricard and um, Monza, very fast in those tracks. But then tracks like Nürburgring with the old surface and slow speed corners, I think the front engine cars normally seem to struggle there, apart from Mercedes. But yeah, very similar in very different how they perform, but had the same sort of characteristics in certain different tracks.
And was it quite different stepping into GT World Challenge, just having a grid full of GT3 cars as opposed to British GT, where you've got the mixture and having to manage things like traffic and things like that a bit more?
Yeah, I think if I came from GT3, British GT into GT3 in GT World Challenge, I'd probably say yes, very difficult. But I came from GT4 where you can't really do much about the traffic. If someone goes down the inside of you in a GT3, you can't move out the way. You're stuck where you are. But experiencing it this year in the GT3, it's a lot more. It's difficult in a GT3 than it is a GT4. I'd rather be in the GT4, even though they would probably say we're idiots overtaking them. Um, but yeah, for me, it wasn't that much of a difference. No.
And out of interest, for longer endurance races where you're sharing the car with potentially three or more drivers, how do you go about finding the sort of optimal setup for the drivers as a whole? Because obviously, when you're in a championship like British GT, where you've either got the Pro and the AM or the Silver and the AM, you tend to have a setup that suits the AM the most because they need to be able to essentially get the most out of the car in their stint. So, how different is it having the setup when you've got a lot of different drivers?
Good question. I think it's more the what other cars are in the team. So let's say come to you, we had four Aston Martins in the same team, all on slightly different setups, but you can sort of counteract it. So someone might be on a soft spring platform and someone might be on a stiff and they're much quicker. And then you move to the soft, if that makes sense. So having two cars in the team, which I've always had, the same with Paradigm, helped a lot. But in a driving point of view, we have our debriefs, and with the silver drivers, it's normally the same sort of feedback. We all want the same thing, and the AM drivers just want it to be comfortable. but they want it to be fast. So sometimes they do just leave it up to you to sort the car because they know how if it's on edge for me, it's going to be maybe too much for them. So we have to bring it back slightly. But yeah.
Again, in the BMW and back in British GT, this time with Century Motorsport. How did the opportunity come about? And what are your aims for the remaining rounds, obviously, as we're kind of midway through the season now?
Yeah, when I think the budgets get a lot bigger, and when you don't have a lot of budget, I think everything comes in very last minute. Um, so it was another late call. So I was actually in Vietnam with my girlfriend and her sisters, about days before the media day, and Matt called me and said you need to get on a plane and come back for the media day. You got an opportunity to drive a British GT and a GT3, and straight away it was obviously a difficult conversation to have with my girlfriend, but she was understanding and got straight on the plane and went to media day, and then the day after flew back to Vietnam. So um, it was great to meet JB or Jonathan, who I'm sharing the car with this year. He's sort of had the same sort of route and timeline as me in racing. Sort of done Porsche Sprint Challenge, and then he did Carrera Cup, which was championing. But he's great to be around and quite enjoying actually sharing with an amateur.
And you started the season quite well, didn't you? Taking the full point scoring finish at Silverstone. Did you expect such success so early on in the season, or was that quite a pleasant
No,
surprise?
no, just because of how last minute it was. We had no testing or anything, straight into it. But we knew we just focused on ourselves. Yes, there was more BMWs in that race when there isn't now. So we did have a look at how the other BMWs were performing. But we weren't expecting to come away with full points, that's for sure. But at the end of the day, it's endurance racing and anything could happen. And we picked the right moments to box in the last stint, which definitely moved us up the order. But no, we weren't expecting it, but we're not going to complain.
And obviously, you got further success at the most recent rounds at both Alton and Spa with further podium finishes. But also with Spa, how was sharing the track with the French GT4s and other classes? Was that a challenge or did it not really affect you?
It did. I understand why SRO did it, to be honest, because I don't think it was the most exciting race in 2025 to watch. So to go with other grids maybe sounded like a good idea. And I think it was, but I just think with the Alpines, they were just about 10, 12 seconds too slow. So you'd really approach them and it would be quite dangerous in sort of high speed corners. I'm surprised there wasn't more accidents, to be honest, but it was difficult. You could be 5 seconds ahead of someone and then be literally bumper to bumper with someone at the end of the lap. That's how much time you could lose behind the GT4s and the Alpines. So it was fun though. We're not going to complain.
And was it nice to be back at Spa again, even though it was just with British GT this time?
Yeah, loved every minute, but it was a shame that to see the trucks rolling in for the 24th when I was leaving, that was difficult. But yeah, it was a great couple of days and really enjoyed it.
BMW is known to be one of the more accessible cars for the AM drivers. So, how impressed have you been
100%.
with your teammate, Jonathan, who you already mentioned? Obviously, it's his first year in GT3 machinery. And then also, how do you feel you've been able to kind of help and guide him as he's getting used to that?
Yeah, so the BMW for me is one of the most comfortable cars to be in, especially over a long stint. It's not that physically demanding. You have all the aircon systems. You literally have aircon in going into your back. You have a load of different fans, and it's very comfortable to drive. Um, which a lot of amateurs say compared to other brands, such as maybe the McLaren's quite intense. And I think he's done a great job getting straight into it. I don't think he was expecting to do it this year. I think he was expecting to do another year of cups. But he's the sort of driver you go on the radio and say you need to brake later, and within 5 seconds, he just does it straight away. So enjoying that aspect of helping him out, but also making sure it's enjoyable for him as well, because that's what we're here for, as well as trying to win.
Definitely. And the next round is obviously at Snetterton. What's your outlook, and is Snetterton a track that you particularly like or dislike? Like, what's your kind of feeling going into it?
I've always liked Stanton, and a lot of people don't like it. I'm not sure why. I was on pole there in GT4, and I think on a quali lap, it's a track you sort of have to really send it, which I enjoy that aspect of it, and it really puts your pressure on you. But it's hard to say because I've never driven it in a GT3, and it's also difficult to say where we're going to be with the BMW when we go there. It's it's a sort of potluck of the pace, what you're going to get in pace. And I think at the moment we're struggling compared to other manufacturers. I think we're a little bit similar to the Mercedes, but the McLarens and the Lambos are a little bit too far ahead at the moment to even try and compete. But I think we've done a good job just taking points where we can and podiums. And we sort of haven't taken a backward step in any races we've had. We've always moved up in the order, which shows maybe the BMW is not the strongest on that pace in British GT. But I think we've got a really good chance. I think maybe with the time penalties of other people in our class at the next round might really help us. And I think it's 50 or so points you can score from the two 1 hour races, which is actually more than Silverstone. So that shows how important the 1 hour races actually are.
And touching on those 1 hour races, do you prefer those to a longer endurance? Because they're almost a little bit of a sprint race in a way, with only 30 minutes in the car for each driver, or do you prefer a longer endurance race?
I think it really depends what track. I think for somewhere like Alton, I don't think as a driver doing an hour on there would be really intense and quite difficult. So I think the 30 minutes is actually perfect. But um, it's nice there's variation. It brings different challenges. It also means the pros get to start on the silvers, which we don't get to do in the endurance races. So that's really good fun. Um, so I've actually haven't had a start yet this year, because it was under safety car at Alton. So really looking forward to that at Snetterton.
Now, new almost sub-championship within British GT and the wider SRO racing community almost is the GT Academy series. Could you explain exactly what that is and why it means so much to you?
Yeah, so essentially it's a championship focused on driver averages, qualifying times in the silver class, basically. So all silver drivers, and it happens in America, Asia, and a few of the other SRO championships. And it basically, whoever wins at the end of the year in each championship gets a free drive at the Spa 24 and 2027, which obviously like a massive amount of budget to do the Spa 24. You're looking at over sort of 100,000. So for SRO to bring something like that to the table for a silver driver and recognize that we need something to help us in our careers, I think is really, really good.
And finally, on British GT, how do you see the rest of the season going? And have you got any future plans, past that at the minute, or is it just taking it as it comes?
Definitely, I think when you're fighting in a championship, you have to take every round as it comes. As I know in my career, it's towards the end of the year, anything could happen and it could go in your favor. So you have to just take every round as it comes. But we're definitely looking at doing more endurance races, 24 hours and stuff like that in the Middle East and maybe even Barcelona. But it's probably too early to say at the moment. But doing something like Asian Le Mans series would be absolutely mega.
Brilliant. Well, now we've kind of made it to the quick fire ending kind of round of the podcast. So we've got a couple of questions for you,
Yeah.
and I'm looking forward to hearing your answers. The first one is, what is your favorite track you've raced on in the UK and your favorite track you've raced on abroad?
Alton Park and Monza. Very different. I don't think many people would say Monza, but I absolutely love driving there.
What's your favorite race you've competed in and why?
I'd like to say the 24, but I'd probably say the when we won in Paul Redcard, the 6 hour.
Thought you were going to say the 24. That's thrown it off there. I'm surprised. But good answer. And the final one is, which racing car would you love to drive that you haven't had the opportunity to yet?
I don't think I will get the opportunity, but probably an RSR Porsche from when it used to race at Le Mans. A good friend, Ben Barker, used to race them with GR Racing. And I used to go and watch, and the sound of those things are absolutely amazing. So probably, yeah, the RSR.
Brilliant. Well, that's all the questions that we had. Thank you so much for joining the podcast this evening. It's been great chatting to you, and all the best for Snetterton. I'm looking forward to watching you race there.
Thank you very much. Cheers. Thanks.